Shmai, Pranda. I'm Claire Hiett, and my recommended read this week is Asha and the Spirit Bird. It's by Jasbinder Bilan, and the illustrations are by H. There's some really nice, bright, vibrant illustrations on the cover with some nice little drawings inside throughout the chapters. It's a story of hardship, but it's also a friendship and hope, a story about that. Really good read. I've enjoyed the story. It's set in the Himalayas in Asia, and there's the symbolism around the bird, the spirit bird, is what's inspired me to put together this week's creative practice. I paint a lot of birds as an artist. That's one of my favourite themes. I'll show you some of my work in a moment. So what I'd like us to do is to create a fantasy bird. So we're going to look at lots of different examples of birds from the Himalayas, which I'll show you in a moment. And then we're going to take a bit from one and a bit from the other and put them together to create a new, flamboyant, colourful, fantastical bird. I'll talk you through the materials and some of my work next. As an artist, I like to use lots of different materials in my practice. So I'll stick things into my books, I'll draw, I'll paint, I'll use collage, I'll use ink. This one was done with stencil, so there's lots of sort of different repeat patterns and things in that one. I like to vary the scale as well, so make some things slightly bigger than others. There's a different parrot underneath that one. I'll also use different coloured paper to start off with as well. I don't tend to like starting with a white piece of paper every time. Sometimes I'll work over a double page spread and work out things on a bit bigger. Again, that's collage. It's an element of different materials, and there's some paint and things in the background of that one. That's another colourful parrot, bird. This one then is a collage. That one's a painting. This one's a painting, but the birds are actually in a tree, so I've made it about more than just the bird. I've looked at sort of where they live. And then this one then has been done on a different background. There's a lot of texture in that one, and that's a goldfinch, which is my favourite bird. I'll show you quickly some of the ones that I've painted with watercolour next. This is the beginning of a series of birds of the world that I'm starting to work on. These are all painted, and I've used a waterproof fine liner and watercolour. So there's two, and there's a couple more. So that series is going to expand. If I take you back to the previous ones, these are the kind of things that I want us to be inspired by today. So we're going for colour, we're going for hair, bushy tails. I don't know if hair is the right word, feathers for birds, isn't it? Big long tails. You could maybe think about doing your bird flying. You could think about doing your bird in a tree, or you could think about having some plants or something around your bird. There's lots of decisions to be made as to what your approach is going to be today. Quite like to see something done on a slightly larger scale, maybe, so that you've got room to make a big bushy tail, or a big beak or something like that. And we're going to grab things that are really colourful with lots of pattern and make it nice and vibrant and cheerful. Some of the basic materials you're going to need. We're going to need scissors and glue, because we're going to be collaging. A black felt pen or a Sharpie if you've got one. Try and make it a permanent marker, because if you're going to be adding paint and water as well, anything that's not permanent might bleed into the water. A pencil, a couple of paint brushes, a pot of water. You might want an apron, and you can protect the surface as well with a bit of old paper or an old plastic cloth, something like that. It's always handy to have a little bit of tissue paper as well, so to help you with cleaning your brushes. In terms of paper, try and aim for A3 if you can. Let's try and go a bit bigger than usual. A3 is double the size of your basic photocopier or printer paper. You could stick two pieces together if you don't have anything like that, and use masking tape rather than sellotape, because the sellotape tends to resist any paint or anything that you put on top of it. But if you're going to collage and stick things over it, then that doesn't matter. As I said earlier, I often quite like using something with a bit of colour to start off with, and not always starting with just a basic white piece of paper. And these sugar papers are really nice as well. And I'm being drawn to this yellow today. You know, quite often I tend to go with something that feels right for the subject matter that I'm exploring. And I don't know what it is. Maybe, you know, maybe I've picked something up from the references that I've got to show you, but I quite like that yellow as a background. So I'm going to start with that yellow piece as my background. What we then need to do, every artist, designer, craftsperson, whenever they're starting a new project, they will always look at what other people have done before, or, you know, look for inspiration on the theme that they're exploring. You know, go to the library, find a book, look things up online. So I've got some references, and I've particularly gone for Himalayan birds because the story is set, Asha the spirit bird is set in the Himalayas, in the mountains in Asia. And I've looked for colourful, really interesting ones to inspire us as well. So these three are called rosefinch, but look at the pinks and purples, you know, they're beautiful. And look at the background as well. Like I say, you know, you might start off with a green sheet of paper, and if you haven't got a piece of paper that's pre-printed green, you could paint it green and then just set it to one side to dry until you're ready to carry on. So think about your background as part of your planning before you start. I've got a couple of birds that are sat on twigs, on branches, and then there's one in flight, so that we can look at the wings as well, because some of you might produce a bird that's flying rather than one that's sitting down or static. Then we've got a crimson sunbird. I really like these little blue, it's almost like a little moustache, isn't it? But it's into the feathers on the chest of the bird. That's quite nice, the way the bird is standing on that branch that goes across the front as well. Then we've got a little bit of a leaf coming into play. You can see a bit of the tail. It's got quite a pointy beak. So is this one, the fire-tailed sunbird, but that's got a lovely long red streak of a tail. And that one, you know, both of these are in the middle of the composition, so you know you need to decide as well if you want it to be to the side like this, or if you want it to be in the middle of your piece of paper. So there's another couple of bits that we can look at. This one's a great barbet, the top one. Looks a bit scruffy, but I liked all the colours, and who doesn't love a bit of a scruffy animal? You know, you've always got a sort of soft spot for them, haven't you? Could just be a little gust of wind blowing its feathers. Lovely yellow beak, beautiful green. And this scarlet tanager, I thought the shape of that was beautiful. Looking at these wings starting to spread, and you can see it's just about taking off. So that's a lovely one, inspirational piece, that one. And I'm thinking of basing my bird on something like this particular shape, because I like the fact that it's just leaping off that branch, just heading off to the sky. Himalayan monel. Some of these don't actually look that real, do they? Because they're so exotic. But the colours in these are absolutely beautiful. It looks a bit like a peacock that we see in this country. Look at that warm yellow in the tail, and the snow there. You know, you could, if you are using a white piece of paper, seeing as we're basing our bird in the Himalayas, you could think about setting it in a snow scene. You also need to think about whether your bird is going to be in profile, which means are you looking at the left or the right? Or are you looking at the back of it, or are you looking at the front of it? Lots of things to consider, lots of choices to make before we start. A Himalayan coutier, just nice pattern on that one, I thought. And a Himalayan black lord tit. Again, it's got beautiful pattern, but I really like the spiky hair on that one. That's really cute. Red-billed blue magpies. Look at the tails on those. Aren't they fantastic? You know, I think I'm going to go for a big, long, flamboyant tail, because you know, this is one of the things that I really like about birds. This one's an Indian pitta. And looking at these two pictures, it's actually the same bird, but because it's standing in a different way and its feathers are more ruffled, but it looks slightly different, doesn't it? But if you look at the colours and where the colours are, that's the same bird. So that's something to consider as well, is, you know, what position is your bird going to be standing in? Are the feathers going to be ruffled, are the wings going to be flat? These then this is the illustration from the book, Asha and the Spirit Bird, the Lammergeier, which is illustrated by H, as I said. And this Lammergeier is based on a bearded vulture, and that's what the bearded vulture actually looks like. So you can see how that's been painted to resemble, well, just to represent one of these creatures. And look at those lovely big stocky legs, the big chest, the big wings. You can see that's a big bird, and that little beard, and look at the eye, look how bright the eye is. That one looks a bit scary but there with the neck feathers all ruffled. So that's where we're taking our inspiration from. I've got a few more illustrations here by H, who illustrated Asha and the Spirit Bird. This one's really fantastical. You know, it's obviously based on a bird, looking at the head, but the shape of the body and the tail probably not very realistic. This one then is a bird that's been made into something slightly different. This one is a snake bird. You've got a snake at that end, but if you turn it around, there's a bird at the top. So that one's really interesting. You know, could you turn it into something slightly different that isn't completely bird? You know, we're going for the fantastical. Some more fantastical bird illustrations. This was really lovely with all those feathers and the shape and the direction that they go. These ones are cute, but lots of nice pattern, and you can see they're all in slightly different positions, which is something we've mentioned to consider. These then from behance.net, look at the beaks on those. I mean, they're obviously not real. They're fantastical illustrations, fantasy art, but that's something that you could certainly consider. You could make a crazy beak for your bird. And then lovely patterns on these again, and again, all in slightly different positions. So there's some inspiration. You know, you can stop the video and have a look at any of these if you want to, you know, be inspired by the colour or the shape or the tail or the beak. So look back through these when you need to. I've also, one of the things I do is I always keep a basket of scrap papers. These little craft books that you can get from the Works and the Range and places like that, they've got some lovely papers with patterns on and good colours, and they'd be ideal for collaging a fantastical bird. Another thing that would come in handy would, if you actually paint some sheets of paper. You know, that's just watercolour painted onto a sheet of paper, but you've got some nice patterns and textures that, you know, that could be a bird's tail or some feathers for the wings or something. So things like that always come in handy. If you've got marbling inks, marble some paper, because that's really effective and gives you some beautiful patterns and colours. You know, these really lend themselves to creating some kind of fantastical bird. So if you've got those marbling inks, get them out and have a play with those first. Lots of different craft papers with patterns. You can get some plain ones, plain flat colours on them. You can get ones with flowers, you can get ones with birds on, all sorts of things. Sometimes as well you can find some really nice papers in packaging. So you know, if you get a parcel, there might be something that comes through, a bit of tissue paper, or that's wrapping something that you think, oh, I like that, I want a spotty bird, so please can I have that bit of wrapping paper. So what we need to do is to gather a lot of scrap patterned papers like this. I decided that I want my fantastical bird to be to have a branch. I mentioned earlier I might have it just flying off from the branch. So I've just cut from various bits of paper a piece that's almost the width of my paper, so I can stick that one down. And then I've cut a couple of branches from a slightly different paper as well, and I'm just going to stick those down like that. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm starting to resolve my background because I don't want to have to work around a bird's wing or underneath its leg or anything like that. So if I put the background down first, then that makes life a lot easier. So just glue this into place. put that one behind there. And then we'll move on to the next stage. Next move, taking inspiration from this little bit here and using this piece of scrap painting, I'm just going to cut some leaf shapes. Look at these leaves, they're sort of long and thin. I'm not going to worry too much about drawing them first. Just going to cut a load of those out of the green, and then when I think I've got enough, I'll arrange them in the corner here. I'm going to need the stem as well, so I might cut that out of this slightly lighter piece here, so there's a contrast. So that's all the leaves cut out and stuck down on that side. I've cut the leaves out for this side and I'm going to stick them down, and then that bit will be finished, and I will move on to do the bird next. So just stick a few of these down. I don't mind if it hangs over the edge like that. Probably going to have a big bushy tail. Quite nice if you've got a big bushy tail or a big beak coming off the side of the paper. Makes it a bit more interesting. Stick those down and then we move on. Next thing we need is to get the parts of the bird's body, and I'm going to do them in stages as well, because we're making a fantastical bird. It's going to be colourful. The wings here are a different colour to the body, so that's fine to do, and the head is a different colour as well. I really like the pattern and colour on this, so I'm going to make that the body of my bird. Now if you're not confident enough to cut it out, then you can draw the shape in first. You might want to draw it on the back so you can't see any pencil lines, but if you do that, bear in mind that your shape will be the other way round. So, you know, you could do a faint, delicate pencil line on that if you wanted to. That would be absolutely fine. Or if you're confident enough, you can just cut the shape out of the piece with your scissors. So we've got the legs. I'm not going to worry about the tail for now. Tail could be coming off the side there. I'm not going to worry about the wings because they're going to be added later. I'm not going to worry about the head because that's going to be added later. One leg, two legs. Again, I can put the legs on separately, and then we'll have the belly coming out to the other wing that way, and then that can go round and up to the neck. So that, I'm happy enough as a basic shape for my bird's body. Now I'm not going to stick any of this down until I've got the rest of the components of the bird. If I stick it down now and it doesn't work, then you know I've wasted the whole thing. And I mean, at the moment I quite like my background. So you know, I've got legs to put onto that, I've got a big tail to put onto it, I've got big wings to add, and a head and a beak as well. So it might look a bit strange, but don't stick anything down at this stage until you've got the rest of the components. So I'm going to go back and rummage through the basket of papers and find a pattern paper or a coloured paper that will work for the feet next. I've decided, because there's going to be so much colour in the rest of the bird, I'm going to go with black legs and feet. So I've put this piece of black underneath and I'm using a white pencil, and I'm just going to measure down to the branch. I'm going to be quite big legs for a bird. One's a bit thicker than the other. And then I can add the feet separately. So I'll just cut those out. And again, don't forget, don't stick anything at this time until you've put all the pieces of the puzzle together to see if it works. Because if it doesn't and you've stuck it down, then you've got to start again. They work okay, they fit, they've measured up nicely to those bits of the legs. Because my bird is going to be taking off, I've left room for the feet. Don't forget, don't stick down. So we'll make some feet next. I've chosen this hand painted piece of paper, similar colours to the body, and again I'm lining up I'm doing this in pen so you can see it, and I'm just going to draw almost like claws, toes. We'll give him 4, and there's sort of like a bit of a one coming off that side. Match it up with that, and then we'll do the same on this side. And then I'll cut those out, and we'll see where we are with that. So that's the feet drawn and cut out, and as you can see, I still haven't stuck anything yet. These are still in separate components. Next, I'm going to put the head on, I think, before I do the wings and the tail, because that will help me balance it all out and see, you know, which direction they're all gonna, the wings and the tails are gonna go. I'm going to use black for the head to balance out the bits, the 2 legs there, and I'm going to measure it up with my body. I'm taking inspiration from this still. You know, that's a real bird, but I'm making a more fantastical one in terms of the colour scheme, and I'll probably alter the tail and the beak. So the head I'm doing now, I'm going to draw around there so it marries up. I'm not going to worry about a beak because I can stick a beak onto that, so I'm just going to cut that out now, and then I'll have my bird head. Now see how that has got a little bit of black going down on its throat. I'm probably going to do something similar with mine. So I just want to mark where I want to cut a piece off. And there's the head. It's starting to look a little bit more bird-like now, but I still haven't stuck anything down, not until I get all the pieces that I want. If at this stage you feel quite happy with what you're doing, you can start to stick a few elements together, which I'm going to do because, say, I think the measurements and proportions and the papers and things that I've used are okay. So I'm just going to glue the feet onto there, and it makes it easier to pick things up and move things around. You know, if somebody opens the door, a foot might blow away or something. So let's just sort of start sticking when you're happy with the bits that you've made. But I'm not going to stick it to the actual background yet. I'm just going to join the legs onto the body, join the head onto the body, and then we'll look at the I think I'll do the beak next. So I've stuck all those bits together. It's starting to look a bit bird-like. Still a bit weird though, without wings and a tail and a beak. So that's what beak next, as I said. Looking back at the references that I chose for inspiration, those beaks are amazing. So you could sort of do something that comes back over the head like that and sticks out really far. That's a really intricate design, so something like that would be difficult to cut. You might need to draw something like that on. I also really like this bright yellow. It's a good shape, that one. This one's quite nice because it's long and pointy. And this is a good one as well. So you could cut the top of the beak and the bottom of the beak separately for something like that. So I'm going to be inspired and do a huge beak. I might not do anything as intricate as that, but it is going to be a big, big beak. So I'm going to choose a piece of paper for the beak and then cut that out. I've chose this green marbled paper. I'm drawing it in pen so you can see it. So the beak needs to come from there, then you've got a bit that dips down like that, and then you've got this, woo, I'm going to take that right into the corner of the paper. Then you've got this bit that comes back over the head in a point. So that's a lovely big beak. Cut that out and then we'll see what it looks like, but I'm not going to stick anything until I'm happy with it. I've cut the shape out for my beak. I've left that little bit there so that I've got something to stick to the head. And then, as I mentioned about drawing these patterns on, you could just take a pen or your Sharpie and then just draw a little pattern. You know, we're making these birds up, so you can be as creative as you like. Okay, that's my beak. Cut it out. I've stuck it on and I've drawn some patterns inspired by these birds from Behance.net. I think my poor bird now needs a tail to balance out that great big beak, and I'm quite happy with the fact that it might spill off the edge of the paper because the tail is going to go the opposite direction. Otherwise the poor thing's just going to topple over. So we'll have a look at a tail next, and I think I might keep it a similar colour to the beak to balance it all out. I tried a few green papers for the tail and it didn't really work, so I changed my mind and I went for blues instead. It sort of balances out the body a bit, but I've broken it up with some black plumage as well, just to sort of link it to the legs and the head. Now, I haven't stuck any of this yet, they're all still loose, so you know, don't forget to test things out before you stick, just in case it doesn't work. So I'm quite happy now to stick this tail on, and then the only thing left then will be the wings, and mine are going to be open, so it's, you know, just taking off. And then once we've sort of put the whole bird together, we'll stick it down onto the background and then see whether or not the background needs any more leaves or anything. You know, you could maybe paint something into it, paint a few leaves or something if you wanted to. You don't have to collage it all. So I'll stick this down next. Okay, so I've stuck the beautiful plumage together, that lovely tail. A lot of these coloured papers are double-sided, so you can decide, you know, once you've made it, if the other side, if you prefer the other side, then, you know, go with that. I still haven't stuck any of this to the background yet, because I've got the wings to make. And I can also alter the angle of the tail once I've added the wings to see what I want them to do. You know, it might, if I stick it on now downwards like that, it might not work with the wings, and vice versa, it might not work if it's up there like that. So I'm not going to stick this down until I've made the wings, but we've got the wings to do next. We're going to start on the wings. I'm not going to do them completely black. I'm going to split them up to have a layer of black and a layer of a patterned colour, which I haven't decided on yet, like I've done with the tail. So what I've done is I've put the body of the bird on the black paper there, and I've drawn around the shape of the body, and then I've drawn the shape of the wing influenced by this scarlet tanager, and then I need to do the same on the other side, and then I'll have the basic template for both wings, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break them up with other bits of paper like that, like I've done with the tail. I've cut both the wings out. That's the one you saw earlier, and then that one I've done it in the shape of that, so it's more like it's like a fan, isn't it? So those two then will be positioned either side of the bird, like so, so that it looks as if it's taken off. I've also used this paper, hand painted paper in my scrap tray that is similar colours to the body of the bird, and what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to put them in there. If you look at the bird here, it's almost like little arms going into the wings that are the same colour as the body. So I've done that, just, you know, cut a shape out of both sides So we've got that. Then I'm going to take a white pencil, and just to sort of add some definition to the wings, I'm going to draw a line up to there. I'll stick this bit on first so that I've got a benchmark to work against, and then I'll stick that bit down and do the same thing on the other side, and then I think my wings would be pretty much finished. I've also cut a little bit there to use as an eye, same sort of colour as the body, so that needs to be glued into place for there as well. Okay, so I finished drawing the detail on my wings, and the bird, they slot in either side there, and the tail will slot in there. I've also stuck the little beady eye in, but I'm going to just give that one more layer of detail and draw a little dot in there so it looks a little bit more realistic. So now, next step now is I need to join it all together and then decide whether or not where I'm going to position it on the background and whether or not the background needs any more leaves. And there we have the fully assembled bird. Stuck the wings on. When we turn it around, you can see that there's just little bits over the back of the body of the bird to stick it down. Now I need to work out the exact positioning on the background. And then I think there's probably enough in it. What you could do if you wanted to is maybe add some leaves at the top. You could collage them like you've done down here, or you could paint some into the background. That would be quite nice to do. You could even, go for a walk and find some feathers. That could be really nice, and stick a few actual feathers into the wings or to the tail or something. Go for a forage out in the woods, or near where you live. There's lots of scope of doing different things. You could paint a flamboyant bird. You don't have to collage it. Lots and lots of different ways of trying. Just be creative and have fun. And there you have my finished bird. Stuck it down to the background, and I did decide in the end to do a few more leaves down the bottom there. And that's it, finished. We'd love to see some examples of what you achieve after following this video. Here's my social media handles, so if you want to see some of the other stuff I've been up to. And then this email address here, lhayes@npt.gov.uk. That's Leah from Port Talbot Library, and she'd love you to send some pictures of any work that you make in response to this video. Thanks very much, have fun, diolch.